The CrossFit Games are the world's premier test to find the fittest on Earth. To win the games, you need to be ready for anything. You need strength and endurance, power and agility. 5 months ago, the entire world was invited to prove their fitness in the Worldwide Open. 26,000 showed up from 59 countries. 1,500 qualified for the 17th semi-final regionals. Now, the 49 men and 47 women competing in the 2011 Reebok CrossFit Games have 3 days and 10 unknown events to claim the title Fittest on Earth and $250,000. Welcome to the 2011 Reebok CrossFit Games.
It is the evening of Day 2, Women's Event 6. We are back in the stadium for the Killer Cage. This 8-lane, 50-foot monkey bar rig was designed by Rogue Fitness in secret and unveiled today for the first time ever. Add in heavy front squats and another first, a bike sprint. This is the Killer Cage.
Welcome to the 2011 Reebok CrossFit Games.
We are at the Home Depot Center in Carson, California, where the fittest athletes from around the world have gathered to compete for the title, Fittest on Earth. CrossFit is a fitness program that combines a wide variety of functional movements into a timed or scored workout. Weightlifting, powerlifting, strongman, gymnastics, running, swimming, rowing, biking. Constantly varied workouts get you ready for anything. Tonight's workout is the Killer Cage. We have 2 drills that are brand new to the CrossFit Games, but were part of everyone's childhood. Monkey bars and bike sprints are combined with heavy squats for an unexpected 3-round workout. The stakes are now higher. The bottom 12 women were cut after the final skills event, and another 11 women will be eliminated after this event. 2010 champ Kristen Clever has pulled into first overall. She has a huge engine but has struggled in the past with unusual elements. Annie Thorsdottir from Iceland, currently in second, is extremely strong and a former pole vaulter. She is known for adapting well to new challenges. Angie Pye was a national level rugby player and is extremely athletic. This could be her event. Elizabeth Akinwale was a competitive gymnast who is also very strong and quick. Watch for her to fly across the cage.
Let's take a look now at how this event breaks down.
Women's Event 6 is a 3-round triplet of heavy front squats, stationary bike sprints, and traversing across the monkey bars. In each round, the ladies must clean the 155-pound barbell from the ground onto their shoulders and perform 7 squats. For each rep to count, they must descend below parallel at the bottom and stand all the way up at the top. The next step is to sprint 700 meters on the stationary watt bike. The last element of each round is traversing down and back across the monkey bars for a total of 100 feet. They must touch the final bar with both hands. After 3 rounds are completed, the clock is stopped when the athlete runs across the white finish line.
We are approaching Heat 3 of the Women's Killer Cage event. Some of the largest and strongest women are in this heat with regard to barbell work.
The time to beat was set earlier by Lisa Shu, 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Let's meet some of the athletes trying to best that. Katie Hogan is typically the class clown, but she intentionally makes herself angry before heavy events. CrossFit Games vet Christy Phillips was a Division I lacrosse player and is currently a nurse at George Washington Hospital. Elizabeth Akinwale's competitive gymnastics career was cut short after 3 ACL tears and 7 knee surgeries. Her path at rehab led her to CrossFit. Canadian Angie Pye is a 35-year-old mother of 2.
The lights have come on, the stadium is packed, and we're about to kick off Heat 3 of the Women's Killer Cage. The first element of this workout, 7 front squats at 155 pounds.
155 pounds for this movement is the heaviest we've seen in CrossFit competition. However, this heat is loaded with some of the strongest athletes in the games.
These stronger athletes are jamming through the front squats, but it's Elizabeth Akinwale in the blue shirt who will be first on to the bike sprint. Elizabeth is a former gymnast and she trains at CrossFit Chicago.
Now, 2 elements in this event, the watt bike and the Killer Cage, are brand new to CrossFit competition and many of these athletes feeling this watt bike for the very first time.
Angie Pye from British Columbia is looking very comfortable on that bike. She's a former rugby player. She was on Canada's national team, and she currently sits in second place.
I'm a mama of 2, that's my main gig. My daughter does CrossFit Kids, they love it, but they really don't care too much about what I'm doing unless I'm giving them snacks. I think that it's the best thing to do as a mama because it gives me an hour away from my kids where I don't have to think about anything but myself and what my body can do, and I think it's win-win for them and for me.
Angie, one of the many impressive mothers competing in the games.
Yeah, absolutely. I have 2 kids, and I do not have a six-pack like that. Stacey Kroon is the first one to the killer cage, followed closely behind by Angie Pye and Elizabeth Akinwale.
These ladies are feeling the cage for the first time, and we've seen people really struggle.
But there is a race between Akinwale and Kroon. Those girls look like they know what they're doing.
Decades of gymnastics experience between the 2 of them paying off.
Akinwale hangs on as Stacey Kroon drops off, and now Akinwale headed back to the squats all by her lonesome.
Akinwale with the no-drop turnaround. We have not seen any other female athlete attempt that.
The crowd here is clearly pleased. They reward Akinwale with a huge applause as she returns for her second of 3 rounds. She now has another round of 7 front squats at 155 pounds, another 700-meter bike sprint, and a traverse of the killer cage.
Akinwale already on pace to beat the fastest time of the day by 22 seconds.
Stacey Kroon remains in second place, followed by Angie Pye. Christy Phillips a close 4th.
And Akinwale once again having no trouble with that heavy front squat.
Akinwale had a 4-lift lead before these other ladies got to the bar, and she will keep that lead as she gets to the bike. As Angie Pye and Stacey Kroon finish their front squats on round 2, we have a short break. When we come back, can Elizabeth Akinwale maintain her blazing speed through 2 more traverses of the killer cage? Athletes receive points based on their finishing order. First place gets 100 points, and there's a sliding scale thereafter. At the end of the weekend, the athlete with the most points wins. There are 10 scored events, and consistency is essential, even though the events are so varied. The best athletes will finish near the top most of the time, so a poor showing in even one event could put you out of the running. Oh, yeah! If you're just joining us, the current leader, Elizabeth Akinwale from CrossFit Chicago, is on her second bike sprint. Let's meet her now.
Well, since I'm new, I guess the CrossFit community doesn't know much about me at all. I'm a mom, a breadwinner, a homemaker, CrossFitter. It makes me feel awesome. It's just a great opportunity to compete again. Excellence is attainable in CrossFit, and it carries over to other areas where I would like to be excellent as well.
Akinwale has now again hit her stride. She's putting on a clinic on the killer cage. And she's gonna do the turnaround again. She will not drop at the 50-foot mark.
Unbelievable, she's on her way back while other athletes are just starting.
Angie Pye still chasing her down, followed closely behind by Kroon and Davis. It's fair to say at this point in time that Elizabeth Akinwale is dominating the cage. She's traversed the 50 feet down and 50 feet back without stopping for 2 rounds.
She is now on pace to beat the fastest time of the day set by Lisa Shu earlier by a full minute.
And she will get directly into these 155 pounds front squats. She has 7 of these, 1 more 700-meter bike sprint, and a final traverse of the cage to the finish line.
Angie Pye now looking strong on the cage as well as she finishes her second round.
She's put 10 feet between her and Stacey Kroon, not a big lead, so there's a battle here for second. But Elizabeth Akinwale currently is dominating these women. She has finished all 7 front squats and is onto the bike sprint as the other ladies return from the cage.
At 5'7", 160 pounds, Elizabeth Akinwale is one of the larger athletes in this competition, which definitely helps out with those front squats. However, with over a decade of gymnastics experience, she is able to keep up on those elements like the killer cage, where typically the larger athletes would struggle.
That blend of strength and gymnastics prowess has extended her lead to over 30 seconds. Canadian Angie Pye will be the second onto the bike. She's 36 seconds behind. This 700-meter sprint has been taking just a hair over 1 minute.
On this third and final round, many of these ladies are struggling with this front squat. We've seen many failed reps, and some women are having to go to singles on this movement.
Here's Stacey Kroon, who's currently in 3rd place, and she's gonna miss her rep there. Elizabeth Akinwale is rounding the final bend in this workout. At this point, it's a gut check.
Sometimes it is harder to push that pace as the leader than it is if you're trying to catch up. At this point, Elizabeth Akinwale is simply racing the clock.
She has now completed the final bike sprint and will be on now to her final traverse of the killer cage.
And Elizabeth Akinwale still with a very steady pace on the cage. She shows no signs of stopping.
This stadium is now starting to reverberate as the crowd raises to their feet. They're urging Akinwale on to do the turnaround one more time, and she will. Akinwale does not drop on her third and final traverse of the cage.
She does it not once, not twice, but 3 times. The no-drop turnaround for Elizabeth Akinwale. No other athlete has done that.
She is making an enormous statement here, and Akinwale will get all the way up and down the cage, sprint across the finish line. She'll be done in 6 minutes, 56 seconds. That's a minute and 19 faster than the previous time to beat.
As she was finishing second place, Angie Pye was just getting onto the cage.
Angie Pye in second place, approaching the turnaround point at 50 feet. She will drop down.
And she is all alone out there. All the other ladies still working through the squats and the bike.
Angie Pye chooses to take the optional assistance from her judge as she takes on the final 50 feet of the traverse.
Now looks can be deceiving. Angie Pye is second in this heat, but she still has a really fast time. She is on pace to have the second fastest time of the day behind Akinwale.
And she will make the final 50 feet in one go. She's across the finish line, and she will have second place in this heat and second place on the day. 7 minutes and 38 seconds. The killer cage causes massive rifts in heat number 3. All of the 7 positions are separated by a significant margin. The highlight to this point, Elizabeth Akinwale beats every other athlete by 42 seconds or more.
You crushed that event. What did that cage ever do to you?
Nothing, but I knew if I got off of it was going to be harder to get back up, so I figured I would stay up there.
Well, man.
The crowd helps a lot when you get that cheer for turning around, so.
The CrossFit Games are arguably the most egalitarian sport in history. If you think you have what it takes, all you need to do is throw down for the 6-week open. Just complete the 1 workout per week at your local gym or even at home with a video camera, and you're in the running. The catch is you have to outperform the tens of thousands of others who think the same. At the end of the open, the top 60 from each region are invited to compete in the semi-final round, the regionals, where it is on. You'll go head-to-head for 6 workouts over 3 days in front of judges and thousands of fans. Only the best of the best survive here, as no more than 3 from each region qualify for the Reebok CrossFit Games. The final event of the evening is the last heat of the women's killer cage. These are the most competitive athletes to this point in the competition.
They have their work cut out for them to beat that time of 6:56 set by Elizabeth Akinwale. Let's get to know some of the athletes. Annie Sakamoto is an avid surfer, a gym owner, and a mother of 2. Samantha Briggs played soccer for the Northern Premiership League in addition to competing as a world-class duathlete. In her other life, Rebecca Voigt works for a bank. She attributes her progress this year to a drastic improvement to her diet. Jenny LaBaugh was the captain of both her soccer and track team at Cornell College. Michigan native Julie Fouché was given a week off of medical school to be here. 21-year-old Annie Thorisdottir is studying chemistry at the University of Iceland and intends to pursue medicine. 2010 champ Kristen Clever is competitive in everything she does. She's earned 3 stars on all levels of Angry Birds and Angry Birds season.
Now just seconds away from the countdown, Annie Thorisdottir has an anxious look on her face. She currently sits 2nd overall. It's where she finished last year's CrossFit Games. She again finds herself chasing this woman, Kristen Clever, who sits in 1st overall. The first element of this workout is 7 front squats at 155 pounds.
155 pounds is the heaviest we've seen for this movement in CrossFit competition, especially heavy for smaller athletes like Annie Sakamoto. It is 40 pounds over her body weight.
Annie Sakamoto and Kristen Clever will be the first athletes to the bike, followed closely behind by Jenny LaBaugh and Annie Thorisdottir.
Now, once again, as these athletes get onto the bike, many of them have never been on the Watt bike before, so they're going to have to learn how to pace it in this very first round.
Already in this round, we're seeing the effects of that 155-pound front squat. Julie Fouché there in the blue is the last athlete to the bike.
Julie has experience on the bike. She may be able to make up ground here.
We have a short break now. There is no clear leader in this final women's heat. Who will be the first off the bike, and how will they fare when the women meet the killer cage? Welcome back to the final heat of the women's killer cage. The women are halfway through the first round, and Annie Thorisdottir will be the first woman onto the killer cage.
Annie Thorisdottir is one of the strongest athletes in this competition and also has a gymnastics background very similar to Elizabeth Akinwale, who set the best time to beat so far, 6 minutes and 56 seconds.
Annie looking very efficient. She is off to the races immediately. Her judge will call her back. You have to touch both hands on that final rung for the rep to count. Now Annie headed back as Jenny Labaugh reaches the end of the cage.
You can see Annie's cheering section there behind her all the way from Iceland.
CrossFit has been spreading like wildfire in Iceland. Annie is essentially a national hero. These guys have traveled over 4,000 miles to come and watch her. Annie, your clear leader as she gets back for her second round of front squats.
And 2010 champ Kristen Clever struggling on the cage. She mentioned before this event she was nervous about that element.
Annie Thorisdottir does not skip a beat. She heads directly into round 2 of 3. She has 7 front squats here at 155 pounds, another bike sprint of 700 meters, and then on to another round of the killer cage.
Annie is 4 squats in as newcomer from Northern California. Jenny Labaugh starts her front squats.
I love going out there and just busting my butt and sweating and trying new things. I played collegiate soccer at Cornell College in Iowa, and after that I started getting into endurance sports. I was running a lot, marathons, half marathons, beating my body to heck, and my boyfriend introduced me to CrossFit. I have the competitive drive again, and I'm pushing myself physically more than I have before.
Labaugh is now off of the bike. She lost 8 seconds on that bike sprint. She needs to make it up here. There's a face-off between first and second place as Annie Thorisdottir and Jenny Labaugh look at each other 50 feet away.
And they are on the cage at the same time, but headed opposite directions. They will cross paths, both of them with a huge lead over the rest of the pack.
Annie is moving quickly enough to effectively reduce that side-to-side swing that has caused some athletes to fail. And as she approaches the final rung of the bar, she will be back for her final round of the triplet. She has 7 front squats at 155, a 700-meter bike sprint, and 1 more traverse of the killer cage to bring it home.
She has quite a big lead here, but we've seen athletes really crumble in this final round. This is anything but over at this point.
You can see there on her front squats, Annie's starting to struggle slightly. She took quite a bit of time there to get that first bar up. No rep, says her judge, and that's a good call by Curtis Bowler. The hip stayed too high. She did not achieve the right depth.
Annie is really going to have to hustle. Her final round will have to be faster than her first round if she expects to beat the fastest time of the day set so far, 6 minutes and 56 seconds by Elizabeth Akinwale.
And exhaustion can get the better of even the strongest athletes. You can see the weight on her shoulders pulling her forward. Those hips go up in the air before her chest rises. Surely an issue that she would address in her training. However, this is competition. If every movement looked perfect, we would assume she's not moving as fast as she could. Annie now done with the front squats and on to her last sprint on the bike.
And Julie Fouché is just finishing her second round on the bike. How mentally devastating it must be to see the leader so far ahead.
Julie has a gymnastics background, but less efficient on the cage than we would have expected. Annie Thorisdottir pounding through her last 700-meter sprint on the bike. Only this bike sprint and a traverse of the killer cage stand between her and victory in this heat.
Annie has now extended her lead to 1 minute and 4 seconds over second place, Jenny Labaugh.
At this point in the last round, Labaugh was only 12 seconds behind. She's watched Annie steadily increase that lead over the course of that round. Kristen Clever in the green shirt now trying to stage her comeback. She has 4 repetitions as Labaugh finishes her squats.
Jenny Labaugh, who was once in a battle for first place, now finds herself in a fight for second place with Kristen Clever.
Clever now onto her bike.
And as Annie Thorisdottir finishes her final bike sprint, it really highlights the amazing performance set earlier in the day by Elizabeth Akinwale. If she was in this heat, she would already be done.
Annie Thorisdottir now moves on to her final traverse of the killer cage with a significant lead. And Annie, one of the crowd favorites, she's brought them to their feet, and the crowd is now going crazy. They want to see her bring it home on this final traverse of the cage.
Annie looking very strong with very little pace change from round 1 to round 3.
Jenny Labaugh continues to hammer out her final 700 meters as she watches Annie climb away with this. She's still fighting for second with Kristen Clever. There's the Iceland cheering section. They're trying to carry Annie along as she faces her final 50 feet on the killer cage.
And Annie clearly knows that she's got this heat locked down. However, she's still battling for placement against all the other times set in the previous heats.
Annie Thorisdottir wants to put as many athletes as she can between her and Kristen. She's currently second in the overall standings behind Kristen. As she approaches the last 20 feet of the cage, she is looking strong. Jenny Labaugh approaches as Annie reaches the final rung, and she will now smile across the finish line. Annie Thorisdottir takes the heat with a time of 8:06.
And Annie Thorisdottir, who was in second place overall coming into this event, finishes first in her heat ahead of Kristen Clever.
Jenny Labaugh closing the final rungs. She will get to the finish and sprint across in second place, 59 seconds behind Annie Thorisdottir. Clearly exhausted, Kristen Clever battling her way through the last couple rungs. She will finish the cage and be the third athlete over the finish line.
Kristen really struggled with the cage in the beginning of this event, but figured it out in time to bounce back.
Clever's 9:27 doesn't even break her into the top 10 in the overall leaderboard. Annie Thorisdottir, who won the final heat, ends in third overall. Her 8:06 was over a minute behind the untouchable Elizabeth Akinwale, who dominated this event.
Annie, smiling again. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling pretty good, full of joy right now. This was so much. I felt like a kid again with the bars just swinging. That was ridiculously fun.
You looked really comfortable, and again, you were smiling. Annie, tell us, what would it mean for you to win the games?
What it means to me? Everything. I really want the title, the Fittest on Earth. That's like, it's not cool to say you're the second fittest on Earth. That's like, why aren't you the fittest? The fittest.
The battle for the top spot overall rages on between Kristen Clever and Iceland Annie Thorisdottir. Annie has closed the gap to just 9 points. None of these women are secure as there's 4 more events and plenty of action to come.
And that is it for day 2 of the 2011 Reebok CrossFit Games. Elizabeth Akinwale dominated the killer cage, finishing nearly a minute faster than the rest of the field. Kristen Clever finished 11th, but that's good enough to keep her in first overall.
We have just 1 more day left. Only the top 24 women are moving on to the dog sled. The quest continues for the title Fittest on Earth and $250,000. I'm Rory McKernan, along with Miranda Oldroyd. We'll see you next time.